Did you read the title? Did it say something like your $70 doesn't buy you cruelty? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. The fact that you bought a game that you didn't like doesn't give you the right to be cruel or unkind to the people that developed that game. Now, I'm going to be clear about something. I'm not saying that you have to like the thing you bought. I'm not saying even that you aren't allowed to complain about the thing you bought. You can have whatever opinion that you feel like towards a game. Even if that opinion is stupid and wrong, you are entitled to that opinion. And to some degree, you're entitled to express that opinion to the corporation, to the video game studio that created this game that you bought. You paid 70 of your own dollars for this game and it disappointed you. And you're angry about that. That is fine. You are entitled to be angry about it. And you're entitled to express that anger in certain channels. If you are mad at that Ubisoft game, be mad at Ubisoft. Express your anger to Ubisoft or to the studio that made the game. But you cross a line when you start being cruel about it. So why am I saying you don't get to be cruel because you spent $70? Let's walk through it. 1, you shouldn't be cruel at all. What are you doing? It's a video game. You don't need to go out of your way to cause harm to other people because of a video game that you don't like. Again, I'm not saying you're not allowed to be angry about it. I'm not saying you don't get to express your dissatisfaction with the content of the game that you're not enjoying. But when you climb into someone's personal social media and start actively attacking that person, when you celebrate layoffs at a studio because the game that you don't like didn't do that well, you're crossing a line into being cruel. And fundamentally, you should have more grace for other human beings. But if you're not buying that, let's go on to point 2. You don't know what caused the results that you don't like. Let's go through an example. Let's say that you don't like the line delivery on a piece of dialogue. Is that the fault of the voice actor? It might be, but it could be a lot of other things too. It might be the fault of the person who was directing that voice actor. Maybe they were given very specific instructions to deliver the line in this particular way. Maybe the writer who wrote that line wanted it delivered in this particular way, and the stage direction specified this particular line delivery. Maybe the recording equipment at the voice studio went down, and the only take they managed to get was this first one that was done just to set the tone, and they were just kind of out of time and stuck with it. So if you go and you start attacking the voice actor for a line delivery you don't like, it might not be them at all. It might be something else. Indeed, it might not be the line delivery at all. Maybe the problem was the writing. So should you go attack the writer? Well, no, because why was the line written in this way? Was it written this way because the writer had a specific thing they were trying to say? Maybe. Maybe it was written this way because there was incredibly tight time pressures due to other externalities on their time. Maybe the direction of the game changed radically 3 months ago, and they had to rewrite this entire character in just 3 months. And you're just getting the first draft of that writing. Maybe the lead writer wanted this character to be in a specific way, and it constrained what the writer was able to do while they were writing this character. Maybe the creative director on the project had specific goals that they had in mind, and they were pushing the writing in a particular way or restricting how much leeway the writers had in order to express their vision on what the game was able to do or be. Maybe the executive producer, all of these people reporting up into the executive producer, decided that this game should be different in tone and was pushing the game direction in a different way. Or maybe the leadership of this project changed 6 times and the direction changed 6 times, and you're getting little bits of writing from each of these different directions, and there was never adequate time to step back and rewrite it. Maybe the CEO of the entire company really wanted his nephew to be hired as a script consultant. And this guy with literally zero experience was coming in and pushing for mandatory changes to the project. How realistic are all the things I just said? Some of them are incredibly realistic. Some of them not so realistic, but I've seen things that look an awful lot like all of the things I just said. So when you decided to personally attack that one specific person on social media, how certain are you that it was their fault, that they are responsible for that thing that you don't like? And I'm going to tell you right now, you shouldn't be certain because you don't know exactly what was going on within the project. You don't know the exact circumstances that resulted in that thing you didn't like. Even people who were on the project aren't always going to be absolutely certain on who is responsible for something being exactly a particular way. These projects have hundreds of people on them. Content moves around between multiple people. Unless I am the person who is actually responsible for something being a certain way, that chain of custody isn't always going to be super obvious to me. And all of this isn't to say that you aren't allowed to have your own opinions, to not like the things you don't like. It's specifically to point out that you being angry at a specific person, you attacking a specific person, is often misdirected. If you feel like you're just not getting the satisfaction from yelling at the corporate Twitter channel or yelling at the studio directly, if you feel like you need to focus it down onto an actual human being, I mean, that's really sad. I'm sorry. That's very sad. And hopefully you can grow beyond that. But I will give you a couple of outlets. If you need to complain at a human being, I'm going to say you don't get to go lower than the first person in the credits. You can go higher than that, but no lower than that. The first person in the credits is the person who was, theoretically at least, in charge of the project. They are the person where at least some of the responsibility is going to lie. Now, did they have full control over what was going on in the project? No, because you could still have the CEO of the company forcing them to use his stupid nephew as a script consultant. But at the very least, they were in charge of the project for a somewhat significant percentage of the time. So if you are mad about Anthem and we look at the credits, no shit, that's me. But yeah, if you feel like you need to yell at somebody for the way that Anthem is, it's much better to be yelling at someone like me who was theoretically in charge of the project, or at least in charge of the project for some of the development time, than yelling at someone who was working on the combat or the level design or whatever. Because again, you don't know exactly what their reality was. When I was an executive producer, I got paid pretty well. And to some degree, from my perspective, some of that compensation was to act as a lightning rod for this negative discourse. It's one of the reasons why I think it is an executive producer's responsibility to have a social media presence. Because some of you, if you're still watching, will play a game and be angry about it and need to yell at a human being. And I think one of the executive producer's responsibilities is to protect his team. And part of protecting his team is providing that lightning rod. If you don't provide that lightning rod, then people who need to vent are going to find places to vent. We live in a social media world. Many people have some form of social media presence. If you, as the most senior person on the project, don't have a social media presence, then people are going to go and find someone else. Someone who isn't paid as well as you. Someone who doesn't necessarily have the tools to protect themselves from the toxicity that is leveled at them. I would say again that you shouldn't be targeting people directly, even the executive producer. But you know what? If you feel the need, the higher up in the organization you go, the more I'm going to say have at her. As you get beyond the executive producer and you get up into studio leadership and group leadership and the C-suite and the person in charge of the entire corporation, they share responsibility in the game you don't like being the way that it is. So if you feel the need to yell at them, again, probably don't, but they're big boys and girls, so they should be able to handle it. Now, the reality is most of those people do not have a social media presence, do not have a way that you can yell at them directly. So a lot of times what I'm telling you is the least senior person you're allowed to yell at is the executive producer. And a lot of times the most senior person you're going to be able to yell at is the executive producer. So once again, the executive producer serves as a lightning rod for all this vitriol. If you feel like you're not being listened to when you complain on Metacritic or you complain on the forums of a studio or you complain into the social media channels of the publisher or the studio, be aware that this stuff is carefully scrutinized, not just by the social media teams, also by the teams themselves. Arguably, in a lot of cases, to too great of a degree. The team is listening, I would say often, too much to what you are yelling about and complaining about in these channels. But don't worry, you don't need to go onto their Twitter channel and yell at them directly because they're going to hear it anyway. Be a human being, have some empathy, and stop being cruel. Stop throwing a party because a bunch of people lost their jobs because you don't know the circumstances that resulted in the thing that you're mad at. People deserve some grace. People deserve some empathy from you. And if you can't provide that, then stay off the internet completely. One last time for the cheap seats, you are entitled to your opinion. You are entitled to be angry about a game that you bought. You paid good money for it. But try to remember that it's just a game. Even more importantly, when you are expressing your complaints, stay away from cruelty. Stay away from targeting individual people. Stay away from trying to cause harm. Stay away from celebrating harm done to actual human beings. Express your opinion to the company that made your game. Tell them what you like. Tell them what you don't like. Be specific. It will help you get games that are more like what you want. But when you are personally attacking individual devs, you are crossing a line. And you're probably attacking the wrong person anyway. A special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there is a link to that down in the description. We also have a Patreon if you are more comfortable supporting the channel in that way. Both Patreons and members get access to our community. So if you are interested in interacting with the community as a whole, that's an excellent way to do so. I'm not sure that I'm going to ask you to provide a comment on this video. We'll see what happens with these comments. If they go really toxic, then maybe I end up turning the comments off completely on this video. Probably not, because as I said, I have lots of experience interacting with toxic people, and I do recognize that some people do not have the level of maturity required to keep their toxic comments to themselves. So probably the comments stay open on this channel. If you have some positive things to say, I'd love to hear it. I will see you again soon. Thank you.